On one of those quiet, sunny spring days when everything around is painted in new colors, a husky named Banner went out for his usual walk. He has fur as shiny as fresh chocolate and eyes that sparkle with intelligence and love. He moved slowly along the paved park paths, sniffing the blooming trees and the fresh green lawn. The sounds of life filled the air. The singing of birds, the chirping of children playing, and the quiet creaking of swings. Although Banner loved walking alone, he didn't mind meeting other dogs. Poodles and retrievers flying past like sunbeams left trails of joy and fun in their wake. He wagged his tail happily and eagerly sniffed every dog he met, taking his time as if trying to remember every note of their scent. But today something was different. Suddenly, his attention was drawn by a faint scent that sharply contrasted with the familiar park aromas. Banner became alert. His ears perked up. He strained in that direction, trying to pinpoint the source of the smell. The wind brought him something unfamiliar to this local comfort, something sweet and unsettling at the same time. Following this call, Banner slowly made his way to a shaded spot between some bushes, where a small lost something rested. It was an old box covered in dust and leaves. It looked as if it had long forgotten its purpose and was waiting to be remembered. Banner approached closer. His nose touched the cardboard, as if trying to check what was inside. The light movements of his paws resembled a gentle dance. Hearing a quiet meow, he flinched slightly, but curiosity got the better of him. He peered into the box and saw something amazing. Soft, tiny kittens, curled up in a ball and trembling from the gentle breeze. Their rough fur was covered in dust, and their barely open eyes sparkled with fear and anxiety. One of them with a white nose and black hair yawned, and its tiny squeak was more than just a cry. It was a call for help. Suddenly, the husky felt his heart fill with warmth and care. Despite his dog instincts, he understood that these tiny creatures needed protection and care. In that moment, despite all his strength and confidence, he felt vulnerable, as if he too were part of this gentle ball of defenselessness. How did they get there? Thoughts of these small creatures being left to their fate pierced him. His paws lowered on their own, and he let out a faint whimper, calling for his owner Whitney. For a moment, his gaze lingered on the kittens, and from Banner's huge, perceptive eyes, something more than mere curiosity emanated. He felt that this unexpected discovery would change his life forever. For now he just waited, listening to the rustling of nature, which suddenly sounded so alarming. The wind continued to whisper its melodies, and the sun, like a naive artist, painted spots of light and shadow on the grass, creating an atmosphere full of hope. Banner took a resolute step forward, still not taking his eyes off his new little friends. A cube of light breaking through the tree leaves created a special magical aura around them. Banner felt his heart squeeze with fear for the kittens. A barely audible whisper, as if coming from the box itself, interrupted his sense of alarm. He couldn't leave them alone. It was unbearable. The plan that came to his mind was simple: to call for his owner's help. Whitney! Banner, feeling that time was of the essence, whimpered louder, more urgently and persistently. His voice broke through the park's noise like a ringing bell calling for action. He briefly looked back, checking if Whitney had arrived, but she was not in sight. Only a couple of passersby with dogs turned their heads, wondering where that anxious sound was coming from. With each new call, Banner felt the agitation grow, as if his own life depended on Whitney hearing him. With each plaintive whimper, he sent pleas full of hope into the air, hoping that she would answer his call. The sun continued to shine, but the patch of shade he had looked into was becoming more and more unsettling. After a few minutes that seemed like an eternity to him, he saw a familiar figure hurrying towards him. Whitney, his faithful owner, appeared on the horizon. Her hair blew in the wind, and in her hand she held another dog's leash. Although the walk seemed normal to her, her attention was instantly drawn to something strange in Banner's behavior. "Banner, what's wrong?" she asked, affectionately leaning down to him. Her voice gently touched his ears. Banner, as if sensing that his secret would be revealed, whimpered once more and pulled her towards the very shade where his little friends lay. Whitney became alert, but as she followed him, She also noticed how everything around them became warmer and more life-affirming. Suddenly her gaze fell on the box. She froze, stunned, and bit her lip with a slight fright. "Oh my God!" she said, jumping up when she saw the tiny kittens trembling with fear and cold, unaccustomed to a world filled with sounds and light. Crouching down, Whitney gently reached out her hand, and the kittens, feeling the warmth, began to move closer to her like small magnets, able to attract care and love. "How did you get here?" she asked softly, looking at them with tenderness and surprise. The kittens growled, huddling together, genuinely frightened. Their tiny faces were covered in dust. They clearly had never known care in their lives. Banner, feeling there was still much work to be done, whimpered as if encouraging his owner. It was like a silent meeting where the two of them decided, these kittens must be saved. And from that moment on, a new chapter began in their lives. The rustling of leaves could be heard as a light breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming lilacs through the park avenue. Whitney, shaking her head slightly, was still impressed by the encounter with the tiny kittens. A desire to take care of them was growing in her heart. She had to act quickly. She turned to Banner and, seeing his interested look, realized that this wasn't just her decision. They were partners in this dilemma. "Let's go, Banner," she said, lifting the box of kittens. "We need to take them home and figure out how we can help them." Banner joyfully barked and ran ahead like a faithful guardian, protecting his new family. Whitney walked behind, holding the box in her arms. The kittens, shocked by the new world, turned around in the box, trying to understand what was happening. They knew little about kindness, but instinctively felt that with Whitney and Banner, they were safe. Along the road they walked past blooming trees, past people who were lost in their own worries, not noticing how a new, amazing story was unfolding in the hands of a caring woman and a wise dog. Every sound, every sight became a real revelation for them. The tiny ears of the kittens perked up as adults and children with dogs passed by, and Banner would sometimes stop to reassure them that everything would be all right. When they returned home, Whitney carefully placed the box on the floor and opened it, waiting for the curious little creatures to come out. And they did, having no idea what awaited them. Their eyes sparkled with surprise and fear, and their little tails could only tremble with excitement. Banner immediately showed his instincts. He came closer, sat down next to the box and began to carefully sniff his new friends, as if instilling confidence in them. Whitney looked at this with tenderness and understood that they had already formed their own small family. "So who do we have here?" she said, leaning down to get a better look at them. One of the kittens, calming down, took a step forward. Its cheeks were covered in freckles, and there was a small black smudge on its nose. Whitney smiled, realizing that each of them needed a name. Every whisper and the slightest movement of theirs echoed in her soul with a gentle tremor. She took a small bowl from the cupboard and filled it with fresh water, and then another one for food. The kittens, tired after their long journey, rushed to the food with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Banner was at his best. He glanced at the food, and then returned to the kittens, pressing his shoulder against them. Care could be read in his eyes. He wasn't just a dog. He had become their protector, their adoptive father, ready to give his love and care. The kittens, feeling the warmth and care, began to huddle closer to him, as if to a mother's comfort. Each of them, in turn, came to try the food, and Banner gently touched them with his nose and licked their ears, comforting them and showing that they were safe. "You'll live here," Whitney said confidently, looking at them with love. "Banner and I will take care of you and do everything to make you happy." This radiated warmth, and the kittens, calming down, began to fall asleep, curled up in a ball near their new dad, who never took his eyes off them. Thus, little souls found refuge in the heart of a caring woman and her faithful friend. The days passed like magical moments, filled with care, tenderness, and boundless love. Whitney and Banner became a real family for the kittens, who gradually got used to their new home. Now each of their days began with noise and fuss, as the apartment space turned into a real kindergarten. In the morning, when the first sunbeams broke through the curtains, Banner stretched out in his spot and reached for his new offspring. The kittens, feeling the warm breath of their adoptive dad, began to wake up. One by one they got up, stretching their small paws and yawning like angels who had just woken up. "Breakfast is ready," Whitney said, taking her place in the kitchen and unpacking a bag of food. She took the plates and carefully distributed the food, making sure everyone got an equal share. Banner, feeling he was being addressed, ran up to the table and whimpered with pleasure, as if inviting his children. The kittens, unable to resist the smell of the food, rushed to the bowls. Their little paws tapped on the floor, creating a melody full of life. They sat down around their portions and, playing with each other, got used to the new space filled with joy. Banner stood nearby, watching them with tenderness. Every time one of the kittens tried to take another's food, the husky gently touched its paw, encouraging it and showing that in their new life, everyone should take care of each other. He often walked past, touching them with his nose and sometimes even playfully pushing each one of them. After eating, the kittens began their little game, puffing, jumping, and exploring the world around them. They pounced on the toys that Whitney had lovingly chosen for them. The soft balls and fluffy mice looked funny, but for them they were real treasures. The floor was a real mess. Sounds like quiet laughter filled the air. And even Banner couldn't help but smile watching them. The kittens won the heart of their protector, and in return, he began to show more and more care. He eagerly warmed them when they gathered around him like little birds, pressing against his warm body. Gently licking them, he wiped the food residue from their fur, like the most caring of parents. "You are strong and brave," Whitney said aloud, watching this touching scene, noting the striking similarity between her dog and the kittens. "You are already a real family." The kittens, although small, seemed to feel this atmosphere of happiness and friendship that filled the house. Each new day became a real discovery for them. They learned about the world and at the same time gained confidence that here, with Banner and Whitney, they were safe. The warmth of home comfort enveloped them, and every evening, tired from playing and exploring, they sought to find their place next to Banner. He gradually got used to the fact that he had become not only a protector but also an adoptive mother for his tiny friends. Whitney watched this touching scene with a smile. She understood that they were creating something extraordinary, and these kittens would forever remain in their hearts. Each of their days was filled with joy, care, and love, and the spirit of a new family was in the air. As days quickly turned into weeks, a special tranquility settled in Whitney and Banner's home. The house became a truly cozy place where the kittens, feeling care and love, gradually turned into strong and independent creatures. Banner, who was initially just Whitney's devoted friend, became a true father to these little creatures, and his instincts of care took on a new dimension. Gradually, the kittens grew. Each of them gradually acquired their own unique traits, reflecting the care and attention they received. The affectionate and playful Betsy with her white spots on her head was different from her more shy brother Max, who always sought to hide behind his mom or dad. But each of them was unique in that they became part of one big, friendly family. On one warm evening, as the sun was setting below the horizon, Whitney arranged a special evening for the kittens. Something special was prepared on the table: chicken meat, which she had cooked in advance to feed her little pets. When the smell of chicken filled the house, the kittens, seeing the pot, were immediately delighted and happily jumped onto the kitchen table, their little paws getting tangled in an attempt to grab a piece of food. Banner, watching this scene with curiosity, approached Whitney. He stood next to her, carefully watching as she cut the chicken into small pieces. Pride and care could be read in his eyes. He knew that he was not just a dog, but a member of the family who also cared for his brothers and sisters. "You don't mind eating a little, do you?" Whitney asked, stroking his fur. "You're the best dad we have." Banner wagged his tail, and his eyes lit up with joy. Whitney set aside a portion of the chicken for him, and when she put it in his bowl, the husky was instantly happy. He began to lick the food carefully, from time to time looking up at his mighty friends, as if showing that together they could enjoy life. Suddenly, the kittens ran into the room and indignantly began to fuss over a piece of meat treat. Their little sounds, like the buzzing of mosquitoes, resembled a game that sometimes made Whitney and Banner laugh. She looked at this scene with a smile, feeling her heart fill with happiness. Every evening, Whitney and Banner came up with something new for their kittens. These were not just days. They were unique adventures that they shared with their newly found friends. The Husky was always nearby, guiding them and encouraging them to explore. And Whitney made sure they were safe. When night fell and the house was filled with silence, the kittens gathered around Banner. They curled up next to him, and he covered them with his warmth and tenderness. Every time the kittens huddled against him, they seemed to be seeking refuge from anything that could harm them. This was the love they were looking for, and they found it in the face of a wonderful dog friend. And when they fell asleep, Banner gently turned to them and, closing his eyes, seemed to guard his little friends from the whole world. Whitney, with a smile on her lips, couldn't take her eyes off this touching scene. She knew that each of them had become part of something bigger, and that they had all created their own little family, full of love and care. With each new day, life in Whitney's house became more colorful and happy, like a bright summer day filled with sun and laughter. The kittens, growing up under the care of their adoptive mother and kind father, became more active and curious. Every corner of the apartment became a new, unexplored territory for them, which they explored with delight. In the morning, as the sunbeams broke through the windows, the sounds of cheerful rustling were heard more and more often. The kittens literally ran around the apartment, playing and showing off all their mischief. Banner, sitting on the rug, watched them with pride, seeing how they developed, how they became independent, although they still remained small and soft. Whitney couldn't help but smile watching this scene. Small balls of happiness jumping around the room, slapping their paws on the floor and getting tangled in the wires. Each new day became a real adventure for them, full of joyful discoveries. Whitney prepared special toys for them, and sometimes even made something for them with her own hands, like small balls from old socks. The kittens loved them as if they were the most expensive things in the world. Banner, knowing that his little friends needed care, was often nearby, encouraging them in time and helping in difficult situations. Although he was a dog, his instincts were as sharp as the best hunting dogs. He was always ready to come to the rescue if one of the kittens got stuck somewhere or encountered something unusual. "Well, how are you, little bandits?" Whitney sincerely asked when she started her morning preparations. She would pick up one of the kittens and gently stroke its head, and it, in turn, would instantly fill the air with happy purring melodies. It was a simple, but such an important moment that filled their house with fun. Every morning began with a ritual. The kittens gathered in a circle, half hungry and impatient, waiting for Whitney to put bowls of food in front of them. They greedily pounced on their portions, and even Banner sometimes added a dose of fun to this matter, getting caught up in a kind of eating duel. It looked both comical and touching. As the kittens grew and became more confident, new funny habits appeared in the house. Each of them became unique in their own way. Betsy, the most playful, loved to get stuck in soft pillows, and Max, the calmer one, found a cozy place next to Banner, watching the others with peace. The other kittens, also full of energy, turned every corner into a real kindergarten. Whitney and Banner enjoyed every moment with the kittens as they brought laughter, care, and of course a lot of mischief. They understood that this was not just a game. It was their life, full of joy and new discoveries. The morning was filled with sunlight, and in the heart of each of them, that very feeling that cannot be expressed in words resonated: love. Time passed and the kittens grew, becoming more and more active, cheerful, and independent. Whitney and Banner happily watched their development. Like nimble balls of happiness, they discovered the world around them. In this enthusiasm and fun, there was also a shadow. Each of the kittens was ready for new adventures, and soon it was time to think about finding new families for them. Whitney understood that this was necessary. Deep down, she knew that each of these little creatures deserved the care and love that others, ready to welcome them into their hearts, could provide. But the thought of parting with these bundles of happiness always made her sad. She remembered every moment, every whisper, every tremor when she and Banner cared for their new friends. It was time to start the search. Whitney began taking pictures of the kittens, snapping her camera, which, as she had in many other shots, captured many cute moments. She chose the best photos on which the kittens looked playful and happy. She then posted an advertisement for the kittens online and in local groups, seeking to find ideal owners who would be willing to welcome them into their families. Within minutes of posting the first posts about the kittens, she began to receive messages from interested people in her inbox. She felt excited, knowing that important meetings were ahead. Some took place by phone, others online, as people shared their stories about why they were looking for a new furry friend. Each message fueled her hope that the kittens would fall into good hands. She tried to carefully consider each answer, and all live discussions were based on mutual understanding and care. When it was time to meet with potential owners, Whitney, full of anticipation and trepidation, invited people to her home. She prepared a couple of new toys for the kittens to demonstrate their playfulness. With each new visit, the kittens happily frolicked and showed off their artistry. Now they had become real actors. Their energy was irrepressible. With each visit, it became more and more difficult for Whitney to say goodbye to the kittens. She watched them play, how they happily hung out with their potential owners, and this caused conflicting feelings in her heart. Every time the kittens laughed, her soul wanted to be sure that they would fall into good hands. "Your family will be a true happiness for them," Whitney said, looking lovingly at her little friends. She explained to the potential owners how important the care and attention they should give to their pets was. But deep down, the struggle continued. It was so hard to part with these bundles of happiness. But every time they met a new family, hope echoed in her heart. She knew that a good fate awaited them. And looking into the eyes of the new owners, she understood that these were exactly the people who would be able to love them as much as she and Banner did. Several kittens found their new homes, and each time she said goodbye, Whitney felt a part of her heart leave with them. She hugged each of them, leaving a kiss on their forehead, as a reminder that they would always be part of her family. And every time a new owner's smile hung over Betsy or Max, she felt she had made the right choice. Several months passed after the kittens found their new families, and it became noticeably quiet in Whitney's house. Every morning when she woke up, she missed the cheerful rustling of playful paws and the cozy purring of the kittens. But the attention of her faithful friend, Banner, helped brighten the loneliness. They still spent a lot of time together, walking in the park, exploring new corners, and enjoying moments full of life. On one of those sunny days when the green trees swayed gently in the wind, Whitney and Banner decided to walk along familiar paths. The park where they loved to spend time was again filled with bright colors. Birds chirped and children's voices could be heard from afar, creating a unique atmosphere of joy. Whitney felt good, enjoying the moments spent with Banner and simply breathing the fresh air. But suddenly the wind picked up a little stronger, and Banner froze for a moment, as if sensing something unusual. Whitney noticed his ears perk up and his eyes become attentive. She stopped and looked at him. "What is it, Banner?" she asked. The husky, not losing a moment, stretched forward along the path, following his interest. They headed towards the bushes where, under the thick leaves, there seemed to be only a shadow. Nevertheless, as Whitney and Banner approached, a scent arose. A faint but memorable one, smelling of something familiar. Whitney crouched down, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw a tiny cat hiding there, looking out of its shelter in fright. "Oh no!" Whitney whispered as the realization dawned on her. It was another tiny creature, lost and left alone on the scene. She was small with bright red fur and large frightened eyes, playing the role of a lost toy hurt by life. Whitney went closer and the cat, feeling her presence, arched its back and began to hiss quietly, preparing to defend itself. "No threat, little one," she said, gently reaching out her hand to show that there was nothing dangerous here. Banner, not wasting any time, approached, carefully sniffing the little creature and trying to make her understand that he was here to protect. His kind look and calmness could soothe anyone. Gradually, the cat began to realize that they would not harm her. She stared at Banner with distrust, but feeling his warm breath and caressing movements, she began to calm down. Finally, she took a step forward, and at the same time Whitney's heart was filled with hope. Whitney took the fluff ball in her arms and, gently hugging it, pressed it to herself. She knew that it was necessary to take care of what was lost again. A decision had already taken root in her heart. These small creatures, even if a few of them were missing, still had to be protected and carefully placed in their lives. "I'll have to take you home, baby," she said, looking at the kitten with tenderness. "You're not alone anymore." She and Banner carefully lifted the little creature from the ground and, passing by the bushes standing under the trees, Whitney felt another connection form between them. A connection of care and love that could connect their destinies. Back home, Whitney nestled the little creature in a cozy blanket they already had for foster animals. Banner watched his new friend with interest. Her furry face instantly reminded him of the other kittens he had also once adopted. Their little lives were similar, but this new mom had a chance to build her own story. The cat, whom Whitney named Clementine based on her first association, initially showed caution, rubbing against the soft blanket as if trying to find her safety in it. Banner, constantly watching her behavior, lay down next to her. He was ready to protect her just as he had protected his previous kittens. Whitney knew that Clementine needed care. After a long day of searching, she arranged a warm night for her. First, she prepared food, serving it in a beautiful bowl. And when the smell filled the house, Clementine, interested, approached what was offered to her. She cautiously began to try it, and soon, feeling that the food was not as scary as her life had been, she began to eat with a true appetite. Meanwhile, Banner remained on guard, carefully watching the little guest. He did everything to make her feel safe. Every time Clementine came to him, he raised his paws, as if showing her that she could come to him at any time. After Clementine ate, Whitney carefully carried her to another room, where a cozy box filled with a soft blanket was already waiting. The kitten looked at her with surprise as if asking, "Is all this really for me?" Whitney smiled and nodded, feeling her heart fill with joy. The night gradually began to wrap itself in silence, and Clementine curled up comfortably in the box. Her heart calmed down. Banner approached her, covering her with his body, as if guarding her from all the worries she had experienced. It was a new beginning for both of them, and they knew that together they would have to go through many amazing moments. Several weeks passed since Clementine came into their home, and life with her seemed to be filled with new colors. The cat finally settled in. She slid across the floor, playing with the toys that Whitney had kindly taken for her from the remnants of her old life. Her fur became shiny again. Sometimes, when she gently yawned, sparks of happiness could be seen in her eyes. Banner, as before, remained nearby, watching every step of his new friend. He became her protector, best friend, and perhaps even older brother. Every day together turned into a real performance in which a friendship grew based on love and care. Clementine, settling into her new home, brought even more light into it. Whitney knew that they had created not just a new family, but a whole story full of fun and joy. She began to see her as a daughter, and Banner as a devoted father who cared for all his children. One morning, Whitney woke up earlier than usual to treat Clementine to a delicious breakfast. The whole house was filled with the aroma of fresh food, and the cat, having woken up, was already impatiently looking for her portion. She whimpered as if she knew something special was waiting for her. Whitney smiled as she watched this scene, her heart filling with warmth. Clementine, as before, quickly ran to the bowl, forgetting her former insecurity. "You are now part of our family," Whitney said when Clementine won the breakfast. The kitten turned to her, and Whitney felt a connection between them that would never be broken. The sun took its first steps into the light, and looking at Banner, Whitney understood that together they had created something more than just a house. It was a family full of love, warmth, and support. Each new day became a new gift, and Clementine was that bright note they were looking for to complete their symphony of life. In the end, they understood that family is not always about blood ties. A family is those who are accepted and loved, who make every day special and who will always be there, unconditionally and forever. Now imagine traveling across the empire. The Andes rise in impossible ridges, deserts stretch endlessly, jungles choke with heat and rain. How do you hold such lands together? Rome had its paved highways. China had its silk roads. The Incas had the Kapaknan, the Great Inca Road System. Over 40,000 kilometers of stone-paved roads and paths crossed the empire. They climbed cliffs on stairways cut directly into rock, spanned rivers with suspension bridges woven from grass, and tunneled through mountains. Messengers, chasquis, ran these roads. One sprinted a short stretch, then passed the message like a baton to the next. In this relay system, information could travel 240 kilometers in a single day. Europe, with its horses and written letters, could not match this speed. The Incas ran faster with nothing but legs and lungs. Imagine a rope bridge hundreds of feet long, woven entirely by hand. No iron chains, no bolts, just fibers of ichu grass twisted into ropes thick as a man's body. Every year, entire villages gathered to cut, twist, and replace the bridge in a sacred ceremony. It was not only engineering, it was ritual. By making maintenance a festival, they guaranteed that infrastructure endured. Today, a few such bridges are still woven each year in the highlands, living echoes of Inca genius. But what about knowledge? How do you govern an empire without writing? Rome had scrolls. China had characters. The Maya had glyphs. The Incas had quipus. At first glance, a quipu seems trivial. Strings of colored wool, knotted in strange patterns. Early conquistadors dismissed them as toys. But to the Incas, they were the memory of the empire. Numbers, census records, harvest totals, labor duties, all encoded in knots. Modern researchers have discovered positional decimal systems in them, even hints of narrative structure. Some believe quipus may represent not just numbers but stories, a form of recording lost to us. Imagine an empire run by accountants carrying bundles of string, each knot a fact, each cord a report, couriers sprinting down roads with messages not on paper but in woven code. It was data storage without ink, information technology without letters. But empire is not only stone and numbers, it is food. And the Andes are cruel to farmers. High altitudes freeze crops, rains vanish unpredictably, rivers carve deep valleys. How do you feed 10 million people here? The Incas answered with terraces. Mountainsides were cut into steps, each step catching soil, water, and sun. Stone retaining walls absorbed heat by day and released it by night, protecting crops from frost. Thousands of varieties of potatoes, maize, quinoa, beans, and peppers thrived. In Moray, circular terraces created microclimates with temperature differences of up to 15 degrees Celsius. Scholars now believe Moray was an agricultural laboratory, a place where farmers tested crops for every corner of the empire. And they stored the harvests with equal brilliance. Across the mountains they built kulkas, granaries with ventilated walls and floors that kept food cool and dry. Potatoes were freeze-dried into chuno, maize dehydrated, quinoa stored for decades. Even in drought, armies and cities were fed. Some granaries still contain preserved food today. Compare this with us. In the 21st century, global food chains collapse when a single canal is blocked, or when a drought strikes California. The Incas, with no markets, no money, no trade networks as we know them, fed millions for centuries. But here lies the true genius of the Inca world. Their technology was not separate from their faith. It was their faith. The MITA system required every family to contribute labor, to build roads, terraces, temples. Could have been slavery. Could have sparked rebellion. Instead, it was sacred duty. Work was offered to the sun, to the gods of mountains and rivers. Festivals marked planting and harvest. Rope bridges were rebuilt with prayers. Cities rose not just as places to live, but as offerings to the cosmos. Ritual was their operating system. By embedding labor into religion, the Incas solved one of history's hardest problems: how to mobilize millions without wages, without rebellion, without collapse. People worked not because they were forced, but because they believed. Stand in Cusco. The city was not arranged at random. Its streets and plazas formed the shape of a puma, sacred animal of strength. Rivers ran along its spine. The Coricancha, temple of the sun, glittered with sheets of gold. Or climb to Machu Picchu. Its temple of the sun is aligned to solstices. At dawn on June 21st, Light enters the window and strikes the altar precisely. This was no accident. It was a machine built to synchronize human time with cosmic time. The city itself became a clock, a stage for ritual, an amplifier of authority. Priests could speak from terraces and be heard by thousands. Ceremonies echoed against stone walls, magnified by design. Like the Maya ball courts, Inca plazas were instruments as much as architecture. And yet, what happens when the machine breaks? In 1532, Francisco Pizarro arrived with fewer than 200 men. The Inca Empire had just emerged from a brutal civil war between brothers Atahualpa and Huáscar. Smallpox and measles, diseases brought by Europeans before the Spaniards themselves arrived, had already killed thousands. At Cajamarca, Atahualpa was captured in a single day. The Spaniards demanded a ransom of gold and silver so vast it filled a room. The Incas delivered. Then the Spaniards strangled him anyway. The empire collapsed. Roads remained. Granaries remained. Temples remained. But the cosmic order had been broken. Without their emperor, without their rituals, the people lost the glue that bound the empire. The Spaniards destroyed the Coricancha, melted its gold, built churches atop its stones. But they could not erase the foundations beneath. The Incas did not vanish. Their descendants still farm terraces, still weave textiles with patterns older than Spain itself, still speak Quechua. Each June in Cusco, the festival of Inti Raymi still honors the sun god. Cloaked now in Christian symbols but alive. In remote valleys, villagers still rebuild rope bridges with prayers. Farmers still preserve potatoes as chuno. And satellites still reveal hidden terraces and shrines forgotten under pasture and jungle. The empire is gone, but its heartbeat endures. What then do we learn from the Incas? First, that technology is not only machines. It is also culture, rituals, obligations, beliefs, that mobilize societies more powerfully than wages or laws. Second, that sustainability comes from reverence. The Incas treated soil, water, and crops as sacred. By embedding infrastructure in religion, they ensured it was maintained with devotion. Finally, that even the strongest systems can fall, not from weakness of stone or road, but from weakness of unity. Civil war and betrayal undid what no earthquake ever could. It is dawn at Machu Picchu. Mist curls through terraces, condors drift silently overhead. The sun rises and its first light pierces the temple of the sun, igniting the stone as though it were still alive. For a moment you hear it, the echo of drums, the murmur of prayers, the whisper of an empire that turned faith into stone, ritual into roads, and mountains into machines. The Incas are not gone. They remain in language, in terraces, in festivals, in the memory of mountains. The question is not whether they are lost. The question is, will we learn from them before we too forget how to balance our world between sky and earth?